This is Sarah, and I just want to take a moment to speak to you about this week's sponsor, Favor. Favor Inc. is a statewide family-led nonprofit 501c3 organization that is committed to empowering families as advocates and partners in improving educational and health outcomes for our children. Favor is the Connecticut state organization of the Federation of Families for Children's Mental Health. Favor offers a single place for families with children who have medical, mental, emotional, and behavioral health challenges to find information, assistance, and training. To find out more about Favor, please go to favor-ct.org. We are grateful for our opportunity to work with Favor as a sponsor, and now on to the rest of the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Caregiver Chronicles. My name is Sarah, and today I am here with Gabrielle Crichlow. She is the founder of A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. She's also the host of the podcast Hot Topics. She has a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from St. John's University and a bachelor's degree in psychology from Temple University. Hello, Gabrielle. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm finally on your show, so this is awesome.
I know I've had the privilege of being a guest on your show twice, and I'm so excited to finally have you here on Caregiver Chronicles. You have an impressive background. Would you like to further introduce yourself to my audience?
Yeah, I think you covered it, but I am the owner and director of my tutoring company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. I've been in business for 9 years now. So it's definitely been a journey. Of course, I've been a private tutor many years before that. It's just my company is the official platform of my tutoring experience. I bring a lot of background into my company. Of course, you mentioned it. I have my graduate degree in mental health counseling and a bachelor's in psychology. So I bring all that mental health background to my company as well, because I do integrate the two. I do integrate mental health and education, because I find that there is a connection between the two. And that, my belief was that, and it's part of my mission statement as well, is that if you're not doing well in school, you're not doing well emotionally and mentally. And, and we've seen countless times that when you improve a child's self-esteem, you improve their academics in school. So we've seen it countless times, the connection between mental health and education, and that's the foundation of my company.
Absolutely 100%. I couldn't agree with that statement more. Mental health and education for students go hand in hand. You cannot learn if you are not thinking clearly for whatever reason. If you're not doing well in school, if you're struggling in school, your mental health gets worse because it's just another stressor that you have. But it's like a circle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely. It's all like the circle of life, to reference the Lion King. But yeah, it's if a child, we work with child and adults, but for the sake of explanation, and well, I guess we see it more with kids, in that when you could tell that a child they have depression, or when they're sad, when they're like, they may not verbally express their emotions, but you tend to see behaviors, right? So you'll see more like, they don't want to get out of their room, or they're punching a wall, or they're punching a pillow, or they're crying all the time, or they're quiet. They don't want to talk. So there's little behavioral things that we tend to see in children, and these things tend to come up when it's school. Well, most of it is school. There might be other personal factors, but I think most of it tends to be about school. And then you see it in the family dynamic as well, particularly in my personal experience, in that when the child is not doing well in school, then you have the parent who's frustrated and they're yelling at the child and they're constantly scolding them, and it's and the child is feeling that energy, and in turn they're reciprocating that energy as well. So energy is contagious. I want to put that out there for all the listeners. I'm going to repeat that one more time. Energy is contagious. Okay, so if you're giving out negative energy, then someone will absorb it and they will internalize it. It definitely affects the family dynamic as well, especially when the child is not doing well in school. They're behind on their grades, and because unfortunately school is their whole life. So of course, and then it's a reflection on the parents as well, unfortunately, in terms of school performance. And that's another pressure on parents, and in addition to all their other pressures, in addition to work pressure, pressure in their marriage, pressure with paying bills, all that stuff. And then you have the issue with the child not doing well in school. Then you have parents calling them all the time, like, your child needs to do better or they're going to get held back. So it's a lot. It's a lot, and it all cycles together, and you see it in so many different ways. So it's not just the child's mental health, but it flows into the family dynamic, which in turn flows back into the child mental health, which flows into the parents' mental health. So it's all interwoven.
Yeah. I would agree with that a lot. As a family unit, kind of everyone has to do their part to make the family go well. And, when a family member is not doing their best, the rest of the family sees that, and, they have to find ways to pick up the slack, support that person, do whatever it is. And it can be frustrating, and it can absolutely be frustrating for the other family members, but also, like you said, like energy is contagious. Energy is mirrored, when you're, even as a parent or any caregiver situation that you are in, if you walk into a caregiver situation and you are frustrated and you are angry or you're just tired, your person you care for is going to feel that. And they are going to mirror that feeling, and they might already be feeling it. So you go in with your feelings and it's just going to exacerbate everything. And I really appreciate you for emphasizing that, because that is so important, and that's something that we sometimes forget. Energy is contagious, even not outside of the caregiver situation. At the grocery store, you're frustrated, you're gonna get everybody. The cashier is frustrated, she's gonna frustrate the customers, and or vice versa. It's an all around thing. So I think that that's just so important to emphasize. And I know that you have experience working in a kind of changing gears a little bit, but I know that you have experience working like in residential schools and things like that. Can you talk about that? Would you like to share about that? Or
Yeah,
residential
yeah,
settings?
yeah. So in terms of as a way to earn some money, I worked in a couple of residential facilities. So the population is a completely different environment. And that, so this one more focused, I mean, it's still it's not really mental health. It's more of developmental disabilities, and they were adults, so they're like 60 and up. And well, I guess I better not name drop, but I there was one residence I worked. So the one I worked in Long Island, New York, that one it's a mental health residence, and it was adults, but like they were, the goal of that residence was to get them to be independent. So it was every person had a goal, because they had like a treatment plan. So it was like the goals could be like becoming more financially independent, or going to school or getting a job or whatever it was, and then the counselors would work with them to achieve that goal. Oh, I also forgot. So another goal that they, I guess the general goal of everyone in the house is to live on their own, because the house is more uh, transitional, and that you're here because you have a mental illness, and the goal is to get you out of the house and into your own home or into more independent living. So it was, in a way, it was two goals. But that was an experience there, because they had to cook their own food, so they had to, I guess in a way they had to learn how to cook, not only for themselves, but they had to cook for the whole house, which is interesting at that. And of course, one big thing was taking medication on their own, so that was always a big factor. And it's they have to learn conflict resolution, that they have to, because I think it was 8 people in the house at one time. So they have to learn how to deal with other people. And there's so many different personalities, and they have to learn how to interact with each other and how to deal with each other. Um, so I know my experience, it was a lot of like, breaking up fights and stuff like that. And then they also have to deal with, because they go to a lot of like doctors, and how to deal with the doctor they don't like, or it's a lot of personal relationships that they have to work out, and there's a lot that goes into that. And I think, I mean, I wasn't there full time, I was more part time, and I was an overnight shift, so that was a thing in itself, because they could easily just, you can't really sleep. It's like, it's sort of like a cat nap. You can't really like be knocked out completely, because you always have to be alert, because it's a 24/7 house. So they could easily just come in, and there could be an emergency, and then it's happened a few times as well. So it's sort of, you can't really be too comfortable. But that's the thing with overnight shifts. But yeah, so I think that was a lot in itself. I think the experience there. And of course, you're gonna have some people, as with any kind of residence, you're gonna have some people um that are independent, that are driven, that actually want to live on their own and not have to live with 7 roommates. Maybe bring it down to like, 2 or 3. So you're gonna have the ones that'll excel farther, and then you'll have the people that they want to be taken care of. They don't want to be independent. And those are the people. Oh, as I'm talking, it's coming back to me. So it was actually phases that we had. So it was like phase one, you need a lot of care, something like that. Phase two, phase three, like the higher in the phases you went, the less intervention from counselors. And I think like phase four is like, okay, you can go, you can leave. So you'll have the residents that are like phase two, phase three. Like I said, like they'll excel farther, and then you'll have the ones that are they're in phase one, and they've been stuck there for like 3 or 4 years, because they they don't want to improve, and they don't want to live on their own. They want someone to take care of them. They want someone to remind them to take their medication. They want someone to be on top of them. And so that was always an issue there. Like, okay, this isn't the appropriate house for you, because the point of this house is for you to get out, right? Is for you to transition out and live on your own. But then you'll have those people that, and again, they won't vocalize it, right? You'll have to watch the behaviors. If they're still stuck on phase one, they still have to be reminded to take their medication, to get on the bus to go to program, because they went to day program. So you'll have those people that don't want to be independent, and they want people to take care of them. So that is a life lesson in itself. And that's a lot that I got from there, is that you'll have different, you'll have people that they want to be independent, and then you'll have people that don't want to be.
Mm.
So, and even though we try to push them and remind them, and they just don't want to do it. And again, they may not vocalize it, but you could tell in the behavior, like, they like someone on top of them, and so it's, um, I mean, I think eventually those people tend to go to other residential treatments, other type of residential housing, but like we can't stay in this one house forever. But yeah, but I mean that's a big lesson there. You're gonna have multiple personalities, and that was a that's a lesson that, as I'm talking, it's all kind of flowing back to me. But in anything that you do, you're gonna have different personalities. You're gonna have, like, even kind of linking it back to the tutoring business, you're going to have people that excel, you're going to have people that want to improve, and then you're going to have people that really don't want to. And even just bringing it back again to the tutoring, it's, in what I've seen students that, which really aggravates me, but you'll have students that want to do the bare minimum. Like, I'll push them and say, hey, you should do this extra thing. You might get extra credit. And they'll say, no, the teacher said this. That's all I'm doing. And it really is frustrating because there's so much more that they can do. But it's like, but they'll just do the bare minimum. And unfortunately, some teachers will accept that. And that is what it is. And then you'll have the other students that they want to excel, they want to go the extra mile, and so you have to push them. Either way, across the board, and this is a lesson that I picked up in all of my learnings. I guess it's, I always try to push. We should always push. But how well they'll absorb the push is, it is up to the individual. So, um, and I just realized I just talked about the one house and not the other house that I worked at. But anyway, but I guess, those are the lessons that I learned, and in dealing with different personalities. Some people, like I was saying about energy is contagious. It's also how they'll take the energy as well. So, you give that push energy, that motivation energy, and some people will take it and some people won't. But and then of course, I, you have to adjust your behavior, so it's now you're picking up their energy. So the ones that don't really want to move forward or don't want to move forward as much, you'll pick that up. And then you have to adjust and say, okay, you know what, if you don't want to move, forward that far, let me adjust my behavior and just go as far as you want to go. Well, if you want to do the bare minimum, that is up to you. And that's one of the things that, I tell, like, my students in tutoring, and even the ones back in that residence. It's okay, it's your life, it's your treatment, and you decide what to do with it. But I'm going to present these opportunities to you, right? And you decide what you want to do with it. And just know that everything you do has consequences. So if this is what you want to do, this is what's going to happen. And and if you like, okay, well, I don't care, okay, it's your life, it's your treatment. So basically, and I know I'm rambling a lot, but I think it's just, connecting the two together. I mean, the people in the residence, they were a lot older, so 50 and up, 60 and up. And they've been on years of medication. And, that's a whole other conversation there. I don't want to get into the conspiracy of that, but I think, so that one is more challenging in itself, and it's harder to motivate. It's harder to motivate not to be ageist, but it's harder to motivate older individuals, um, especially again if they've been on medication for several years. But I don't want to get into that. But it's so it's easier to motivate younger people as opposed to older people. But either way, anyone can have a treatment plan, anyone can have a goal, and you can still push them to achieve that goal. So whether it's you push them hard or you push them light, but either way. And that's it.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I really love how you tied your work, as a caregiver in a long-term or in a, residential facility to your work as a tutor, because there is definite overlap. Caregivers are definitely educators are definitely a form of caregiver. Oftentimes the skills that we use to relate to people, in a professional or even in a personal level, we can carry those skills over and from career path to career path or time to time. And I really think it's interesting also how you were talking about motivation, and some people are just less motivated to do whatever, to be independent or whatever it is, or even to get A's. Not everybody cares if they get A's. Some kids just care that they pass. They just want to pass and get the heck out of there. You know what I mean? Like in tutoring, I'm sure you see that kid every day. And I'm sure that they're not dumb kids. I was that kid. I just wanted to pass to get the heck out of there. I didn't care what grade I got, as long as it was enough to get me through. Because I didn't want to be there. It wasn't even that in some people it's enough. In other people, there's the fear. If I'm successful, then I always have to be successful. If I raise the bar too high, if I'm ever down, then what? There's all these fears and just associations, and you can't make people think or feel the way that you would about them. They have to find their own confidence in themselves, their own desire for independence, their own desire to succeed in their way and what that looks like for the individual. And I find that really interesting. And I just, it's something again that I can relate to as a parent, as a, student, as a person with ADHD, as just a human in general. There are things that I care more about succeeding in than other things. And that's, I think we all just are, all of us in the world, our priorities are just so unique. So
Yeah.
I just appreciate you touching on that.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that, that you'll have some kids that are afraid of success. I never thought of that. I mean, that's a whole deeper level, but, I never thought of that. I think my experience has usually been, I mean, I have seen it. I've seen like the kid that they got hundreds all the time, and then they drop down to an 85, and then the parents are freaking out and they're like, why don't they have 100? So, so I can see that. And again, that goes back to the family dynamic, right? So, and now you'll have the parents that, the kid has a 90 and 90, 95, 100, and then they drop 10 points, and then the parents are freaking out. And then they're like, oh my God, please tutor my kid. I want them back in that high range. And so, I've seen that. So I can see that's more of a fear of failure than success. Because when they drop, then that's where, again, the parents are on top of them. Like, what are you doing? Why are you dropping? Why are you not doing your homework? And it's just a lot. So it's just, they want the grades, higher. So I guess the parents are not on them as much. But the fear of success, I've never seen that. Huh. I think my experience has mostly been the fear of failure because of the reaction of parents, or those are the type of people that I tend to see. So I've never seen a fear of success. Huh. That's a whole other thing. But that's an interesting thing. I was like, I never thought of that. Huh. I guess my experience is, again, like the fear of failure and And again, I've also seen like kids that just, okay, they just want to pass. And then that also ties into the family dynamic, because then the parents are usually are the ones that are saying, I just want my kid to pass, 60, 70, whatever. you know, and it's you kind of see it. It's like the behavior of the kid. You can see it in, the behavior of families. And so it's there. I guess I've never seen a fear of success. I tend to see either the fear of failure, or it's not that they don't care, they just want to do enough, right? And those are the ones I tend to see. So maybe I tend to attract that kind of crowd. I don't know. But I've never seen that fear of success. I'm sure it exists. I'm sure it exists,
I'm telling you, you can only go so high before you can't go any further.
Yeah.
And it's like, what do I do? And now I'm already at the top, so I have nothing left to strive for. What do I do? Where do I go? And there is a legitimate feeling of like, now what? I've done everything I thought I was going to do. Now what do I do? There's a lot of people who do present that way. And again, like you said, the fear of failure, the I have to pass everything with a 95 or higher. If my GPA is less than perfect, then I'm not perfect. You know what I mean? Like, so many people
Yeah.
will associate their grades, especially kids. They'll associate, and parents do this. And I hate it when parents do this. They take the grade and they look at the grade, and their kid's value is whatever their grade is, whatever, that's the value. And unfortunately, I do see that in families, and I hate it. And I'm guilty of it. My kid came home with an 80 on a math test once. Mind you, this is also the child who taught himself division in one night. So when he had an 80 on a math test, I was like, dude, like what? Like how? Like every math test has been 100 or 110. Like you've never gotten an 80% on a math test. What happened here? It was geometry. It was like geometry stuff, like basically he struggled with that concept. I didn't realize that it was a new concept that was being introduced that was difficult for him. Everything else was easy. This aspect of math just isn't. And when we get that grade that's below our kids' expectation and our expectation for our kiddos, I think we need to not panic as parents. Look at what they're learning and say, hey, is this something new that you've just been introduced to that you're struggling with? How can we help you? Rather than panic about it. Right?
Right. Because it's also, I guess it's also, well, in a way, I'm kind of on a yes and no with that, because yes, because I mean, but your child has, and you talked about it on my show, your child has ADHD, right?
And autism,
No,
yes.
on autism. So I guess in a way it's understandable, but for someone, I guess my yes and no is like, yes, don't panic. It might be a new topic, it might be a new concept, and especially if the child has a learning disability, developmental disability, it's going to take them a while to grasp it. But my no is, if your child is used to getting, and I was that kid, I was usually the smart kid, that if you're used to getting 90s and used to getting hundreds, and all of a sudden something drops to an 80, you're like, what happened? So I think I wouldn't say panic, but there should be a concern about what happened. Your grade drops, is everything okay? What changed? So if your child was a certain way and then all of a sudden they drop, you do want to be cognizant of that, and you do want to point that out and say what happened, but not, you also don't want to panic and say, is the world ending? Like,
You're
are you failing?
grounded.
Like, what
Yeah.
is it? Yeah. So it's you want to be aware, you want to be cognizant, you want to acknowledge it and say, I notice a change in, what I'm used to. Is everything okay? Do you need help? But I like what you said about, is this a new topic for you? This is where you might ask, do you need some help with this? And that's where you may want to get a tutor. So I guess you want to acknowledge that there is a change, but you don't want to panic, right? So you just want to tackle it more constructively. In that, I noticed you dropped below this is not usual for you. Is everything okay? Is this a new topic? Do you need help? Not like, why are you failing? What are you doing? But just what happened here? you know um it's like you want to bring attention to it, that there is a change, but you also want to deal with it constructively. And that, is this a new topic for you? Like you said, is this difficult for you? Do you need some help? What can we do to address this? So
Yeah. And you definitely don't want to do it in a way where you're putting like unnecessary pressure on someone where again, geometry isn't my kid's best subject. Or whatever, writing is another example. My son's handwriting is absolutely atrocious. He has always struggled in that area. Everything else he's above grade level in. Writing, not so much. So our response is do the best you can. Try your best. We know you're best with writing. You're going to be passing, or get the accommodation, like use speak to text or typing, for writing programs. Ask for an accommodation, get an IEP, a 504 with an accommodation, so you can be at grade level. Because realistically, in jobs today, how much do people write with pen and paper? If the handwriting is an issue, it's almost all writing today is done on computers, um for most career paths. So you have to be able to
yeah.
sign your name and write basic, but and that's a conversation we've had with my kid and his teachers. Like, how can we get you better at writing? Basically, at this point, it was just occupational therapy. It was strengthening those pincher grasp muscles in the wrist, the weak parts of the body. But I've never put the pressure on my son with writing where it had to be perfect. I've expected math tests on addition and subtraction to be perfect. I expect his geography and spelling to be good, not perfect, but good. But I don't ever want my kid to feel like, and I don't know if this is just me as a parent, but I don't ever want him to feel like he has to get perfect grades all the time, or else he's not valued as an individual. And I think that sometimes, again, I see families where they see their kids and they see their kids start to struggle, or even if it's just one subject that they struggle in, rather than write it off as, okay, this isn't their strong point. They're going to struggle with this part, but it's okay because we're moving on to the next chapter in a month or whatever, or next quarter, they'll be learning this instead and they'll be able to pick that grade up. I don't think it's realistic to expect students to be perfect academically all the time, because it's not acceptable to expect someone in their career to be perfect all the time. It's not acceptable to expect any human to be perfect all the time. So, academic perfection is great if you can do it, but if you can't, how do we just improve on your weaker skills? And how do we accept, like, okay, this is where you are with that. As long as you're continuing to try your best, you're doing great. As long as you're doing your best is good enough sometimes. I think we as parents, and I think educators, forget that sometimes. I don't.
Right. And then another thing that we, not just parents, but we need to do more as just individuals, is that, well, as caregivers, is we want to call out and acknowledge when for lack of a better phrase, when they do something right, when they do something successful, when they actually meet a goal, we want to bring attention to that and use positive reinforcement, right? So, which is a counseling technique, right? Is, oh, I saw that you went up 10 points, that's awesome, that's amazing. Or, hey, you did really well on that, that's great. Keep it up, keep going, you're doing really well. Okay, it's when I tutor and I see my kids, let's say they're doing really well and then they mess up, and then I say, okay, hey, it's just a minor setback, it's okay, that's why we're here, let's keep going, let's practice. Or, okay, so that you got it wrong, let's see what you got wrong, let's go over it, let's point out, what did you do wrong? All right, so you see that, so you know not to do it again. All right, so now let's do it again, right? So it's motivating them to keep going, and then when they get it right, awesome, you got it right, you're doing pretty well, keep going. So even just, you don't want to overpraise because then it gets annoying, but it's just at the right moments, like, oh, I saw you did something nice for that kid, that's awesome. Or, hey, that's wonderful that you gave him a pencil or something like that. Or particularly grade wise, like, oh, you got a ribbon, that's awesome, let's put your ribbon up in the door or something like that. So just any kind of success, any kind of um accolade that they get, you definitely want to call it out and just say, hey, great job, keep going. Because then it's there, that's, the energy is contagious, right? So you're giving positive energy towards the accolades, towards the good things that they're doing, and you're bringing attention to that. And then when you're reinforcing, it's reinforcing behavior, right? It's called operant conditioning, right? And which is another psych term. But basically it's the example is, if you kick a wall, right, and $100 come out, and then you kick a wall again and you get another $100, what are you going to do? You're going to keep kicking it, right? Because you want more money. So that's sort of like that, so the more that you praise the behavior that you want, the more that you'll see that behavior, right? But again, we don't want to overpraise, there is a limit. But the more that you praise a certain behavior, you'll keep seeing that behavior. So
Yeah.
so that's something I think we need to do as caregivers, as teachers, as parents, is actually bring attention to when they actually do something right. And especially when you've had that kid that's like failing, like one after the other, after the other, after the other, and when they finally improve, you don't want to say, oh, finally you improved. Like, no, that's condescending. Just be like, oh, great. Like, oh, this is wonderful. That's great. You're doing well. Let's keep going. Because I've heard that from parents as well. Like, oh, finally. Like, that's not reinforcing. That's
Yeah.
condescending. Don't do that. And it's like something, just because parents are in their emotions as well, right? So unfortunately, some parents need to check themselves and parents can be frustrated, like you said, but the kids are picking that up, right? Because energy is contagious. You should have a banner. Energy is contagious. So, when parents are frustrated, the kid picks that up, right? So it's just taking a deep breath, like, whatever you got to do some breathing exercises, and just, you know what, this is great. Give them their props, give them their credit, because they actually improved. So
Yeah.
yeah, so you will definitely want to give credit where credit is due, and I think
Yeah.
we should do that as caregivers.
Absolutely. And sometimes, and like, again, not every like tutoring, caregiving, or parenting situation is the same. For my youngest son, putting his socks on by himself is a huge deal when he does it. And he's proud because he gets this big smile on his face, like, I put my socks on, and I'm proud because he did it. Yeah, they're crooked, but whatever, we fix it. But we take the win. And I for my son with more profound needs, we find those wins a little easier. They're simpler than with my other son. Not to compare, but it just is that way. We have different expectations because we have two children with very different social, emotional, physical, and mental cognitive needs. So, and that's just with all caregivers and with all people. We take the wins where we can find them and we praise them, but don't overdo it. I love that message. So I want to talk a little bit more about tutoring in a sense of um that's something that when I was young, when I was growing up, I was always under the impression that tutoring was for wealthy. We were not wealthy growing up. We had food in our fridge, but we weren't rich. We didn't have new clothes. Most of our clothes were hand-me-downs. We were kind of like that middle class family.
Mhm.
Um, Access to a tutor where I was, it was not very affordable. Um, it wasn't easy to attain.
Mhm.
And nowadays, it seems like more kids have access to tutoring. Would you agree with that statement that tutoring is more readily available for more families now than ever before?
I would say yes and no to that. Um, I would say yes because you see it more in, I mean, and it does bring l- attention to a certain issue when it comes to socioeconomics. It does call that into question, but in terms of accessibility, there's you see it in libraries, free tutoring in libraries, free homework help. You'll see a lot of volunteer programs that offer it. There's after school help as well. So it is more accessible in that way. My no comes in because even though you find it in libraries and after school programs and volunteer programs, it is limited. So it's not like, it's like probably like an hour a day, an hour to 2 hours a day. And the students that um we tend to see for my company, they may need more hours, so they may need more than 2 hours a day, or maybe they need more days a week, right? And so there is when it comes to private tutoring, there is a favoritism for the wealthy, I don't and people who can afford it. And I will say my company is guilty of that as well. So there is a preference for people who can afford more, but and there is a favoritism for that. But I think because my company is private, it tends to more. We were able to provide more, and we're able to do more when parents pay more. So I mean, there is, like I said, that favoritism, but it's in terms of families that are not so wealthy on the poorer side, there are free resources that they can take advantage of. It's just, it is limited, like I said. So but yeah, it is accessible, but it is limited, right? So it might be, like I said, an hour a day, uh, 2 hours a day. And it also depends on how many tutors are available um, at that time, because it may not be that many tutors available when it comes to the free resources. So I think anything that is free comes with limits, and it comes with a lot of uh, instability, unfortunately. So as opposed to something private, there's a little bit more stability, there's a little bit more leeway.
Yeah.
So yes, while it is more accessible than ever before, it does come with limits. And it may, the child might just get that 1 hour. Like I used to tutor at a library for free, and it was like 2 and 3 kids at a time. And it's like, there's no way I can give the kid that individual attention, you know? So and it was all different grades too. Like I had this third grader over here and this sixth grader over here, and you have the first grader over here. And it's just like, yeah, it's the, and if that's as much as you can afford, I'm just going to grab my 30 minutes and that's it, and well, the parent might be thinking, I'm just going to grab whatever I can and do whatever you can, and that's it, and that's what we can afford. And that's the reality.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it is more accessible, but it has its limitations.
Yeah. I'm glad that it is becoming more accessible, and I'm sad to hear that it is still limited.
Mm,
I would love to live in a world where any student who's struggling academically can access whatever supports that they need. Because I think every kid deserves an education, an equal education. I know that that's hippy dippy and in a perfect world. Um, but I really do with my whole heart believe that like for us to consider everybody equals, every kid needs access to an equal quality education. And if they need additional support, they should be able to have it. I'm fortunate my oldest son has never really needed much academic help. My youngest son is in a program where we're focused on life skills more than academic. Life skills are going to be more important for my younger son than academic skills. Learning to put his shoes on, learning to brush his teeth, learning not to run out of the house. Those are the big goals for him. Because that comes before the education. You know what I mean? Those safety, most basic life things can come before education. But I really do believe, and I would love to see again. I don't even think my library has free tutoring. And we live in a pretty middle ground town. So it's disappointing, but I do know a lot of teachers who would probably love to volunteer sometime for tutoring. Um,
mm,
that being said, so I'll have to talk to my library and some local teachers, see what we can put together.
yeah,
So and
go
I
for
just want to
it.
talk about your podcast also. Tell us about Hot Topics.
Yeah, so it is an extension of my company. So what I like to focus on in Hot Topics is I like to have I say I like to have real talk about real things, right? So I like to have an open discussion about well, I mean, I am picky about my topics, but I whatever it is, I like to do this is where all my counseling comes in, right? So I like to do like a deep dive into it, and I like to practice my counseling skills on my guests. So but yeah, so topics that I tend to focus on education, of course. um what else? A lot of empowerment, a lot of, disabilities, people living with disabilities, and talking about their experiences, like yourself, you were a guest. Um, let's see what else. I've done homeschooling, our robots taking our jobs, trying to think what else. Resiliency, immigration, right? So I've tackled a lot of hot button topics. And I think my goal with that is to to put that information out there that people don't really talk about. Like I've done one about studying abroad, right? So I would love to further that conversation more. So it's like, who really talks about like going to another country to get their education, right? So it's putting that stuff out there that people never really thought about. And even just the guest and myself having that conversation and reliving those things, like, oh wow, like having all these things come up for them that I never really thought about. So it's like a weird counseling session, but it's not. and that's what I like to talk about is things that pertain that stay within the purview of my company, but but it's an open dialogue about it, and that's what we're all about, is having an open dialogue.
Absolutely. And I thought it was really fun to be a guest on your show. Um,
And you talked
so
about mom shaming, yes.
yeah, yep, I did touch about my experience with ADHD and how that, affects me and my family, and also mom shaming. And that was kind of a funny one, because I was thinking back, I shared some of it and I was like, oh no, I was like, some people are going to hear this and know who I'm talking about in these situations. And I looked back on it after and I was like, oh my God, are they going to think I painted them in a bad light? And fortunately, the feedback that I got from that episode was, no, it was done in from a good place. So there was no, you know what I mean? Nobody felt like they were being painted in a bad light. They all felt like it was coming from a very good place. And it kind of made a few people think like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, like I have totally done that and didn't mean it in the way it seemed, or what, but that was really fun. That was so fun to go on your show. Thank you so much for having me as a repeat guest.
Yes, yes, I love it when the guests come back, so that's great.
Thank you.
Maybe
And
we'll
I
do
want
another one.
let me know. I'd be open. There's a lot of topics. There's a lot of topics around mental health. My whole entire life is literally mental health. Oh, literally. That sounds terrible. But that's why I do Caregiver Chronicles, right? To share my story, to share my family story, to bring support, to make people feel less isolated who are going through whatever it is they're going through. Especially family caregivers, because isolation and burnout is just it's so big in there. They're just contributing factors. But thank you so much for talking about your show.
Yeah,
And
thank you for letting me talk about my show. This is awesome.
um so I want to ask you, what is your favorite self-care technique that you do for yourself?
Hmm, that's a work in progress, but I would say, I guess going to the movies, if that counts.
That's Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah,
Listen, binge watching your favorite show on Netflix and having a glass of wine and some popcorn and just chilling is self-care. Like, especially in today's world, like sometimes you just need to escape for a little while. And, if reading a book can be self-care, then why can't watching a movie be self-care? Right?
absolutely. Watching a movie, binge watching TV shows. I think that's my self-care.
Yeah. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. That is totally fine. I have my there there are days where and I know a lot of caregivers feel this way. There are days where like the thought of doing self-care, like meditation or taking a long bubble bath, is just daunting because you just don't have the energy to do it. So watching TV is it's a little break from whatever reality it is, or playing a video game or whatever. It's a break from reality. They're calm, they're relaxed, and it's just a good thing. I'm all for TV and movies as a form of self-care.
Thank you. I need to hear that. Thank you.
Why not? And then my final question for you, where can my audience get more information?
Yes. So in regards to my company, our website is is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Eventbrite, and WhatsApp. So just look up A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. We're all there. Twitter is ASATS 2013. Let's see what else. Hot Topics. You can find Hot Topics. It is available wherever you get your podcast. So wherever you like to listen to your podcast, it is there. Just look for Hot Topics. There is a lot of other hot topics, so just look for the it's a pencil with like the black and gray tip. So make sure to look for that particular logo. But even if you just type in my company, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, it'll pop up. So Hot Topics, wherever you get your podcast, it is available now. Episodes are also on YouTube. So if you also want to watch the video, it is there. as well. So again, just type in my company name, A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, and you will find it. So again, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Eventbrite, and WhatsApp. And again, go to my website, www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com.
Thank you so much. And really quick, are your podcast episodes are there? You put out a couple a week, correct?
Right. So what there's a video and an audio part. So the video I release weekly. The videos I tend to do maybe 2 to 3 times a week. It does vary on whenever the guests are available, but the videos I put out maybe 2 to 3 times a week, and then the audio is released every Thursday.
Yes. Yep. Because I noticed because I follow you on social media. And I notice a lot of your stuff comes up a couple times a week. So which is really great if you're looking for something, like a daily podcast. Definitely check it out. There's some really good stuff in there. Um, Gabrielle, thank you so much for coming on. I'm gonna link all of your social media and your podcast in the show notes. So if anybody's interested, they can follow on there. Also I have shared videos in the past and I will reshare when I share this in the comments of my feed, the episodes of Hot Topics that I have been on, and that would be an easy way for my guests to find you, or and subscribe to your show. Um,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Please share.
Thank you. No, thank you so much for coming on, and that will wrap up this week's episode of Caregiver Chronicles. I want to thank you again, Gabrielle, for coming on. I want to thank everybody for listening. And I want to let you know that the best way to support our show would be to like, share, and subscribe to our show. If you feel you really want to support us, we have the Buy Me a Coffee link, but please don't feel obligated to do that. It means so much more to us when you take the information you hear in a show and you resonate with it and you share it with a friend who needs to hear it. So with that, I want to thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.